Mahindra's Kandivali factory right here on the outskirts of Mumbai, and who better than Rajesh Jejurikar himself to walk me through not just how the quarterly numbers were, but what really is M&M's vision for both the auto as well as the farm division. Rajesh, thank you so much for
Pleasure.
taking time out and
Thanks for coming here.
inviting ET now to your beautiful Kandivali facility.
Thanks so much for being here. It's very much Mumbai now.
It is very much Mumbai, yes.
Not even the outskirts as
For some of us who live in South Mumbai, we still feel that it's the outskirts.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But tell me, Rajesh, let's first address the elephant in the room, which is the earnings. It has been a steady quarter, auto, farm division, everything has delivered on par. But are there still things that you feel could have been better in the quarterly numbers?
Yeah, firstly, so it was a very good quarterly performance from our standpoint. It's our highest ever revenue, very high revenue growth, even sequentially a very good revenue growth. Second highest PBIT for the auto farm business. So overall, we think a very strong performance. Clearly, we had some supply chain challenges on the auto side, more coming out of China, the lockdowns that had happened in China. On the tractor side, the industry turned out to be better than we thought it would in quarter one. A lot of stimulus came out of the wheat exports that had started, and when there was a wheat export ban that came in, we saw some slowdown. Overall, the monsoons have been very good, with the exception of 2 or 3 states which have had some kind of a lag. So we think rural will be steady through the year. It's not going to this year see the kind of upswing we saw 2 years back, but will be steady. Overall, I think we've gained tractor market share. All our brands are doing extremely well on the auto and the tractor side. Electric three-wheelers is doing very well. We have a 74% market share. That segment is all set to get into a big upswing as well.
Yes, that it is, and I'm going to come to that. But let me first talk a little bit more about the quarterly numbers. Clearly supply side constraints still remain an issue.
Yeah.
And engines, as per my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, it seems that there are a few constraints and bottlenecks. What is it that you're doing to resolve them? Because I remember during COVID when we were chatting, you said that semiconductor is a 3,000 rupee chip which is creating havoc in the industry. Are things anywhere getting close to resolution?
Yeah. So many things in the supply chain have got resolved. A lot of the problems we had 12 months back on supply chain were related to the basic ECU chip. That's all behind us.
Okay.
Now
so no more semiconductor chip issue?
No more ECUs, which are engine control unit related chips, right? But as you see a new portfolio, the Scorpio N, which we'll probably get into in a moment, and the XUV 700, each of these has 200 chips. They're like a set of computers.
Oh, okay.
Just the smart core that we have has more than 20 or 25 chips, which come in from multiple different suppliers, like Texas Instruments, so on and so forth. So it's not a question of managing 1 or 2 chips per car. This is like managing 200 plus chips for getting your supply chain completely closed. And they come in from multiple sources. So what's changed is in the last few months, and the reason we still have constraints, is our new portfolio is very high-end, very advanced by way of technology, and all the demand that we're getting is for the highest end version of that, right? So we are managing chips now of a very different scale than what we were 1 year back, before we had the 700 and so on. So that's really been the challenge. But that being said, we've, even in the SUV space, we are now revenue market share number 1 for 6 months in a row. We are number 2 or 3 by volume. So even though we say that volume is a constraint because of supply, I think we have to calibrate it to the fact that demand is significantly higher than supply. Supply is not that far off from what our current capacities and plans are.
Well, they say there's always sunshine after a cloudy day. Here it is. So tell me, is there really sunshine irrespective of all the clouds of supply constraints? Because like you yourself said, your bookings are way higher than maybe the capacities that you're running at. What do you do then in such a situation? Do you increase capacity, or will that always be a roadblock because the supply in any case is strained?
No, we are moving ahead and investing in creating newer capacities for all our SUV portfolio. In fact, most parts of our portfolio, including pickups. We are very buoyant and positive and optimistic about the future. So we are making all the investment. In fact, in the last analyst meet, we had put out numbers of the additional capex that we're doing for capacity. I think that was in the region of 1900 odd crores. So all of that is underway. We are ramping up capacities, but in this business it does take time to get capacities on board. We are working with a multiple set of suppliers. They've got to ramp up as well. It's not just us in our factories. Yeah. So that whole thing I think will get us fully ready in the next 8 to 10 months.
Oh, and in specific when I talk about SUVs, because they are the ones which are hottest in demand from the Mahindra stable, given that bookings are far more, and for some of your cars the waiting is as long as 2 years.
Yeah.
What do you do to ramp up capacity, or are you already in the process, specifically for SUVs?
Yeah, so in the SUV space, basically we are currently producing XUV 700 at a rate of about 6,000 a month.
Okay.
We are going to be producing Scorpio N at a rate of about 6,000 a month. So both, and then we have the Scorpio Classic, which is on top of the Scorpio N. So that's the current level that we are operating in now. There may be some supply shortage in the short term which impact the output, but otherwise we are basically in that range. Now what we're talking about is a significant step up from here, and that's going to take time. We've triggered that a few months back, so during the course of the next few months we'll start seeing that capacity move up to higher levels.
The other thing, Rajesh, that I also wanted to talk about, the fact that raw material prices have been so volatile and there's almost been a 20% cool off, but still auto companies are not increasing their margin guidance, including you. Why is that?
I don't know where you get the number of 20% cool off. It's not been as much as that. We have firstly to calibrate that a lot of the cool off that people are talking about is the cool off that happened after the Feb-March increase, right? So Feb-March saw a huge increase after the Russia-Ukraine war. There's been some cooling off from that. Now, typically most auto companies would have contracts and would have inventory that you're carrying over as you roll over. So for the new material cost to come into your production, it does take phasing, and which is why we are seeing the real effect of that would be visible in the second half of the year, because you have contracts and you have inventory. So for new costs to come in, it's going to take into the second half of the year.
And that's when there will be margin uptake.
But there is still, the costs are still way higher than 18 months back, right? So when you look at the graph starting from, let's say, June 2020 to now, we saw a huge increase and then that kept going up, and now there's some cooling from there, right? We've seen more than 20% increase in the last 20 odd months. Now, this is unprecedented, this kind of increase in commodity.
Yeah, it's like crude has fallen from 130 to 90, but not enough for us to find it comfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when we look at material costs, there are also things which come out of crude. All the plastics in the car, all of those have not come down, right? So we're just looking at one element and then saying, oh, that's gone up 20%.
Sure.
Or we may say aluminium has gone up so much, but there's not that much aluminium in the car that it is going to
do you have any visibility on commodity costs and when things will come back to normalcy or pre-Ukraine Russia?
It's like me asking you what will happen to the stock market tomorrow.
I can tell you that. I'm kidding.
The day you get that right, I'll tell you what will happen to commodity price.
Only gods have the answer to that. But okay, at a group level, what I also wanted to understand was what role does Farina play for the Mahindra group per se? Because like you were telling me before we started our chat, that there are two companies, one is not under Mahindra and Mahindra. Please tell our viewers a little bit about it.
So we have a Farina design company based in Italy, in Torino. That is a service that Tech Mahindra offers its customers.
Okay.
Right? So M&M Auto Business is like a customer to Farina, the design company. We've also tried to convert the brand value of Farina, make it relevant for high-end automotive customers. And there's a separate company which is headquartered in Munich called Automobili Farina. Automobili Farina is going to bring to the market in the next 3 months a hyper-electric car. The price of that hyper-electric car is 2 million euro.
Okay, they're going to bring this car in India?
We are not going to bring this car
in India. Yeah, that's what I was like, $2 million?
2 million euro.
Euro, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to start sale of that in the next 2 months or so.
Okay.
So it's going to be like a limited edition specialist car for those who are, the passionate car lovers. It's all electric, very, very well scored. BBC Top Gear did a story on it a couple of months back. So the Batitsa is really a beautiful car. You must check it out.
I will when it gets launched, sure. So, what's the visibility that you have on what kind of numbers could it add to M&M?
It's going to be a limited edition car, the Batitsa. We're not going to sell large numbers of it.
Yeah,
It's for
sure.
specialists, like I just said. So right now what we've said is that's the plan for Automobili Farina. We're not going to add in a new part of the product portfolio unless we get some new investors who are going to come in and take that story forward. But as things stand now, Automobili Farina has one product, the Batitsa, which will be launched in the next 2 or 3 months.
Will they also be rubbing off on the design capabilities of the Desi M&M cars here on the roads?
Well, quite separately, we've set up a whole new design center in the UK for our auto and farm business, which is in Banbury in UK. And we now have about 30-40 designers based there, and we hired Pratap Bose, who is the chief of design for the auto farm sectors based there. So we're building a lot of design capability ourselves and very good design capability in the auto farm business.
Okay. The one more thing that I wanted to talk about, and I don't want to get this wrong, that the tractor demand outlook, considering states like UP, Bihar, West Bengal, the rainfall has been below normal. And given that that equates or amounts to 35% of the tractor demand. What visibility do you have? Would you say that this is just an aberration because this year monsoon was subpar? When can things begin to look up?
Yeah, so in any year in the tractor market, you will have some states which are going to do very well and some states which won't do well. There's very rarely a time when every part of the country gets very good monsoons and everything else is right for the crop in each state, right? So it's a part of the tractor industry, which is what makes it so interesting. That demand is very, very hyper-local and all the solutions have to be very hyper-local. So typically when we look at a national average of tractor industry, it's just a weighing of the industry sizes of different states. But really each state constitutes in its own way a market completely different from another state. So you're right that rainfall deficit is there in the 4 or 5 eastern states and those industries may see a slower impact. Though UP, which is the largest chunk of that, has a very good reservoir level, has very good irrigation and is generally less dependent on monsoons than some other states which are low on irrigation and low on reservoir levels. But that being said, we hence have a very cautious outlook for the tractor industry for this year, which is in the region of 3 to 5%. Because overall, while rural demand has improved, we don't see it having the momentum that it had year and a half back. And 2 key reasons for that. One is the terms of trade to the farmer are not as attractive. That means the input inflation is much higher than the output inflation to the farmer. The second is the government spending on ag and rural is much lower than it was a year back. Now both of these do weigh in on the overall rural sentiment. But the positive news is large parts of the country monsoon is very good and that is going to lead to a very positive festival season.
Lastly, Rajesh, does it worry you at all that your stock has risen almost 50%, now nearing 1300 per share? The speed at which you've seen the escalation in the stock prices.
No, actually it's not at all worrying because what had happened up until now is most analysts and investors were undervaluing our auto business.
Okay.
Right? Now, what we're seeing right now is a re-rating of the auto business.
Yeah.
And that's happening because of the successes that we're seeing on the SUV side, plus an implied valuation coming out of the new EVCo with an investment from BII, which valued the new EVCo business at a $9 billion, right? So the effect of that is now what is driving the stock price up, because the auto business was really completely undervalued. Completely undervalued.
Are they valuing it right still or should it be higher?
Still undervalued.
It's still undervalued? Okay. We'll take a cue from that, and on that note, we're already at the much talked about, the hottest selling car, which saw 1 lakh bookings in 30 minutes of its opening. Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, Scorpio N. And Rajesh, you have to take me for a spin in this car.
Let's go.
Let's go.